looking at live pictures of Bosingak in Jongno in Seoul, where a large bell pavilion stands. The bell tolling ceremony will begin with a 10-second countdown to midnight to officially mark the beginning of the new year.
And as you can see, there's a large crowd there bracing the cold, but for this time of the year, it's relatively warm at a temperature of about 5 degrees outside. The streets of Seoul are filled with the air of excitement and a jubilant atmosphere.
Good evening and welcome to Arirang TV's New Year's Eve special, ringing in 2014. I'm Yuji Hae in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us as we welcome the brand new year of 2014. We take you through the highlights of the year we're about to leave behind.
In the last remaining moments of 2013, let's remember some of the biggest stories of the year.
And let's also get a preview of what we can expect from the year 2014 with our very own correspondents and experts.
But first, let's check in with our reporters who are out and about in the capital, Seoul, to tell us how the country is ushering in the new year. Now, we've got our Yurian in Bosingak, a large bell pavilion in the Jongno district of downtown Seoul, and our Song Jae-sun standing by at a busy street near Gangnam Station.
So let's start with you, Leon. I imagine the atmosphere there is rather festive.
Hi guys, the atmosphere is extremely merry and it's very packed out here tonight. Around 100,000 people are expected to be here with me tonight, waiting on the bell ringing ceremony, which will take place in just less than an hour. Now, all I'm seeing right now is police lined up everywhere surrounding the pavilion to really control the quickly growing number of crowds. In less than an hour behind me, the bell will be rung about 33 times to be exact, to mark the beginning of the new year. Now, the organizers here have been announcing safety precautions for using fireworks here once, so we can expect what the mood will be like once we hit midnight. And in about 30 minutes, there will be live performances that will heat up the mood even more. There will include performances by singers from the very popular Korean TV audition program, Superstar K. Now, after that, the bell ringing will take place at midnight, and it will be broadcast all throughout Korea. Now, temperatures are still nice out here, hovering at around 6 to 7 degrees, like you said, Sean. So those of you nearby, just bundle up and come out here. Tonight is really the night to be out here with us. I'll be bringing you more updates in just a few moments, so do stay put. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Leon, for the update. We'll talk to you soon.
And let's go down a little bit south to the crowded streets near Gangnam Station, where Arirang News' Song Ji-sun is standing by to show us what a Gangnam-style New Year's Eve looks like.
Ji-sun, you've been there since this afternoon. What's the atmosphere there like right now?
Well, guys, what better way to start the year off with music here in Gangnam style? Now, the countdown ceremony called Brilliant Countdown 2014 kicked off at 9 p.m., which was well underway with K-pop stars like 2 a.m. performing in front of tens of thousands of people gathered here at a stage at the corner of the Gangnam Station. And we have more music coming up with veteran singer Lee Seung-hwan until the midnight countdown. So if you still have some time, you could catch the shows here at Gangnam Station. And what more to come is that there are some wish balls waiting to be launched into the sky as people have been writing their wishes and resolutions on these wish balls on the streets of Gangnam. So we'll wait to see that coming up in this morning, and more people are gathering here to spend their last moments here in Gangnam Station. And I'll be back with more of their stories at just minutes before the countdown. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you, Ji-sun, for the update. We'll check back with you soon. We're back here live from our Arirang studios here in Seoul, now to take a look back at the big stories of 2013 on Korea's political front. Joining us now are Dr. Song Se-ryun, professor of law at Kyunghee University, and our presidential office correspondent, Jin Ju. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank
Professor
you.
Sung, let's start with you. If anyone started year 2013 thinking the political climate would improve with less political wrangling, then I guess they've been in for a huge disappointment this year.
Big disappointment indeed. It seems like we spent the whole year talking about NLL and NIS issues without touching all the other important issues. That represents a missed opportunity, actually. What we started from the presidency election was a big and important discussion about what kind of society, what kind of future should we have in Korea. And both from the president's side and the opposition side, they didn't really table any coherent plans or set of policies to go with. This is how bad it is. The approval rating-wise, number two party in Korea is An Cheol-soo's new party, which is now a phantom party. They
It's
have
not even formed yet.
Yeah. So this is how bad it is that people are disappointed about the political process in Korea.
Well, let's talk about more of the domestic political issue. 2014 seems like it's going to be one where we are going to be focused on domestic politics, as even the president takes more of her policy towards programs and basically life here at home.
Right. It's going to be a big and hairy monster that's awaiting President Park. However, I would argue that her probably best or the toughest challenge would be what's happening abroad. But domestic policies and domestic challenges are pretty big. She faces challenges of reforming the economic structure in Korea, how we move into the welfare states, democratic socialism or social democracy that we started the debate with, and also other chances and the opportunities to form a social harmony that has been entirely missing in 2013. That'll all come back to 2014 so that she can make some headways into those.
Well, all throughout 2013, Jinju, you've been covering the presidential office. I'm sure you have lots to say. I mean, after a blistering presidential election back in 2012, we were expecting more of a calm year, but not so much.
Yes, when we speak of the political challenges, we have to begin with the allegations that the nation's intelligence agency had meddled in last year's presidential election, something that led to a prolonged political impasse at the National Assembly throughout this year. President Park promised to make sure the allegations are clarified and hold those involved responsible. But that wasn't enough for the main opposition Democratic Party, which demanded a special counsel probe into the case.
President Park and the Saenuri Party should leave the clarifying to the special counsel and accept the Democratic Party and the public's call to focus on the people's livelihoods and policy reforms. The ruling Saenuri Party, meanwhile, slammed the DP for not accepting its defeat in last year's presidential election.
It was a year of our party fighting against the DP, which is holding a grudge that dates back to last year's presidential election.
Because of the months-long political deadlock, the passage of key bills focused on improving the people's livelihoods and the budget proposal for next year were only tied up on the last day of 2013. And another point of contention, which has been ongoing for more than a year now, relates to the transcript from the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit. Disputes between rival parties first focused on whether former Liberal President Roh Moo-hyun offered to surrender the de facto maritime border with North Korea in the West Sea during his summit talks with then North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. But after the original transcript was found to be missing from the state archives, the conflict entered a new phase. The prosecution announced in October that the initial draft had never been transferred to the state archives. President Roh's former aides argued that it was only natural for the administration to delete the first draft. The prosecution, however, indicted 2 of No's 8 for deleting the initial draft, saying that any transcript, whether a first draft or an edited version, is a presidential record that should be preserved and transferred to the state archives.
Right, so Professor Song, as Jinju just said, a lot of these issues are about the past as political weapons they've been using. Of course, it's important to address the past, but are we looking forward to more of a future-oriented debate?
I hope so next year. I think the looking back on the past was an attempt on one party to make the whole political discussion as a referendum of who's ruling the nation. But I think the next year, as the Korail strike has kind of highlighted, there is a big debate or a big challenge that we are facing, economic ones, social harmony, and also job security, job creation. All those things have come to kind of fore at the last minute in 2013. So I think those will be probably the most important questions that the parties have to come up with, some coherent agenda and the policies.
All right, Jinju, well, what's up next? What else shook the political landscape this year?
Well, Sean, another incident that shook the political landscape this year was an incumbent lawmaker standing trial on suspicion of plotting to overthrow the government, the first time that's happened in 33 years. Representative Lee Seok-gi of the far-left Unified Progressive Party and 6 of their party members were indicted and arrested in late September for discussing plans to stage a rebellion with members of the revolutionary organization, an underground pro-North Korea group. He denies all the charges against him. Now, more than 20 hearings have been held so far, and a final court ruling is expected next year. With growing controversy surrounding pro-North Korea activities and groups in the nation, the Park administration asked the Constitutional Court to disband the UPP in early November, saying that the platform of the party is based on North Korean socialism. And in our final issue, during her first 10 months, President Park received high marks for her diplomacy with other countries and North Korea policy, but she was greatly criticized for poor selection of top aides. One of the most embarrassing examples was, of course, former presidential spokesperson Yoon Chang-jung. A disgrace to the country. Former presidential spokesperson Yoon Chang-jung's involvement in a sexual harassment case during President Park's first overseas trip to Washington in May sparked public outrage. Yoon was accused of touching a female intern inappropriately at a hotel bar and was immediately sacked. He, however, denied most of the charges.
I only patted the female guide on the waist once and encourage her to do her best in the U.S. to succeed in her career.
Well, the incident ended up turning the focus toward how President Park had selected her top officials. The process, pundits say, was based on her own judgment and did not take into account feedback on the nominees from others.
Well, Professor Song, as Hillary Clinton once said, politics is tough because you get criticism you don't deserve, you get praise you don't deserve, so you just have to focus on what you're trying to contribute to the world. What kind of leader are we going to see out of President Park Geun-hye in her second year?
I think she would not change too much from her approaches. She will be principled, she will be firm, but I think a lot of people are pointing out that her communication style is much to be desired. I think Korea has evolved into a society where procedure, along with the outcome, has become very much important. It's how people get persuaded rather than having a good leader just pointing the way so that people can charge. I think given that situation, I think that President Park will be well advised to be firm and principled, but at the same time be talkative, maybe more communicative towards the people and the party members. I think those are the key attributes that will make her second year of presidency more fruitful one.
A lot to do on her to-do list there. Thank you very much, Professor Song, for your insight tonight, and Jinju for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
"2013, Korea in Numbers." Korea sees its first female president. Korea's country image ranks 8th in the world. Korea holds 16 UNESCO intangible cultural heritages. Seoul redraws K-Dis for the first time in 62 years. The two Koreas reopened the Kaesong Industrial Complex after 133 days. Korea's GDP per capita hits $24,000 US. The number of visiting tourists breaks the 12 million mark. The number of internet users hits 40 million. Box office ticket sales passed 200 million. The country's trade volume exceeds $1 trillion US for the third consecutive year.
Welcome back. We have about 45 minutes left until the new year, and now we'd like to take a look back at some of the most significant events on Korea's diplomatic and defense fronts.
We had some major news out of North Korea throughout the year, while regional tensions in Northeast Asia reached new heights. For more, we bring in our Defense Ministry correspondent, Han Daeun, to help us recap on some of the memorable snapshots of this year. Daeun, hello.
Good evening, Ji-hye, Sean. It's been a busy year for me at the Defense Ministry, and as you can probably guess, 3 out of the top 5 headlines in the defense and diplomatic front are related to North Korea. Without further ado, let's check out headline number 1. Just days before his second anniversary in power, North Korea's young leader Kim Jong-un executed his uncle Chang Song-taek, accusing him of plotting against the regime. Chang was once regarded as the second most powerful man in the North. Experts say Chang's execution reflects Kim Jong-un's will to make clear that he's the one and only supreme ruler of the regime. They also say that Chang, who was a moderate, lost in a power struggle with military hardliners and in particular the state's military Politburo chief, Choi Ryong-hae. As could be seen from the seating arrangement at a ceremony marking the second anniversary of Kim Jong-un's death, Choi is seated next to Kim Jong-un, indicating he has officially risen as the North's new number 2. Headline number 2, North Korea, defying warnings from the international community, forged ahead with a third nuclear test. On February 12th, an artificial earthquake was detected near North Korea's nuclear test site in Punggye-ri, which was later confirmed to be an underground blast. Seoul's defense ministry said the test was the largest North Korea has conducted so far, but it's still unclear whether it was carried out using plutonium or highly enriched uranium. Now, some 20 days after the blast was detected, the UN Security Council unanimously slapped new sanctions on North Korea, targeting its economy and its leadership.
And it was at that time when Pyongyang responded to these sanctions with heightened rhetoric and threats that it really unrattled a lot of people around the world.
How could we forget? Inter-Korean tensions were higher than ever in March and April when North Korea continuously threatened South Korea with further provocations. Now, coming in third in a rundown of the top 5 news items in the foreign affairs sector is North Korea's unilateral closure of the Kaesong Industrial Complex, the last remaining symbol of inter-Korean economic cooperation. Operations remain suspended for 5 months, incurring billions of dollars in losses for South Korean businesses. After 7 rounds of negotiations, the two Koreas agreed to reopen the complex on the condition that a shutdown like that could never be carried out by one side acting alone again.
Right. Throughout 2013, we've seen clear signals from North Korea that it's going through a political instability. And whenever that happens, the favorite thing the leader should do is to shift attention by carrying out provocations against the South. I mean, will we see some of those next year?
I think so. The purging of rivals are pretty commonplace when new leaders come up in the communist countries. But the way Chang Song-taek was humiliatingly executed, that indicates that there is somewhat of a flux of power going on in North Korea. And one thing is for sure that the military part has the upper hand. That means any kind of instability in Korea might be reflected in the provocations next year. Fourth nuclear test is not out of the question, and the skirmishes and local provocations could be in the offing. I think that Korea should be in high alert.
And Don, we also saw tensions outside of the peninsula this year.
That's right. Regional tensions were also unusually high this year, although most of the aggravation was caused by decades-old historical conflicts or disputes over territory. The issue sparked fresh tensions in Northeast Asia, which even led to an arms race in the region. In headline number 4, we have the row over the air defense identification zones in Northeast Asia. In November, China unilaterally declared a newly drawn air zone that included the disputed island chain known as Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyudao in China, and the Korea-controlled submerged outcropping called Yeodo, which angered both Korea and Japan. Korea immediately redrew its own air defense identification zone, expanding the previous demarcation line so that it includes the skies over Yeodo and another island called Marado. Korea's new air zone took effect on December 15th, but there have been no reports of conflict so far. Military officials said they're still in the process of further negotiating with China and Japan to avoid military or civilian clashes in the area. Now, last but not least, bilateral relations between Korea and Japan hit rock bottom this year as Tokyo continued to turn a blind eye to its past wrongdoing. President Park Geun-hye said she has no intention to meet with her Japanese counterpart Shinzo Abe if Japan does not acknowledge its past. And with Abe's recent visit to the highly controversial Yasukuni Shrine, it looks like the two leaders won't be meeting anytime soon either. Tokyo also stepped up its territorial claims over the Korea-controlled Dokdo Islets through various channels, including its textbooks and promotional videos on YouTube.
But Professor Song, anger has certainly built up in Asia after Yasukuni War Shrine visit by Prime Minister Abe. Do we need to brace ourselves for further escalation of tension between the countries or in the region?
That's a very tricky question because I think the Abe did visit the Yasukuni Shrine on a calculated risk basis. He thought the economy was solid and also thought that the relationship with the U.S. was solid. But Japan is having a tough time dealing with the situation where U.S. is unusually harsh about this incident. So they're taken aback by that reaction. So going into next year, probably those two factors will also affect what Japan would do, how the economy does in terms of how Abenomics unfold as they intended to, and also how they deal with U.S. and other countries' situation. Diplomatically. So if those stabilizes, probably Abe probably would push forward with the right turn policies that he has always intended to do. But if not, probably we'll see scaling back some of his agendas. So we'll have to see what happens in the economy and outwards.
Well, Abe's visit to the War Shrine has been described here in Korea as closing the door on a dialogue between Korea and Japan. Should we, in 2014, just keep the door closed and wait until Japan comes knocking again?
Well, in the long run, Japan doing well economically and politically is a good thing for everybody, including Korea. So we should not close the door on anybody, especially Japan. But we have to be principled about that too. I think the whole international community has kind of come to an agreement that something has to be done. Some correction has to be done in how Japan looks at its past history. So we'll have to take steps in harmony or in collaboration with the rest of the international community, but we have to be in step with China and U.S. in especially that regard.
All right, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for now, but thank you, Professor Song Se-ryun and Dawn, for coming and joining us.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right, well, we have about 35 minutes until the countdown to 2014. Let's see if more people have gathered outside Bosingak in downtown Seoul to join in the celebrations by checking in with our Leon at the scene.
So, Leon, how are things looking over there?
Guys, it's absolutely a huge party down here in the downtown district of Chonglo. Live performances has actually begun just a few minutes ago, and 100,000 people, as I said earlier, are expected to be here, and they're chanting and dancing to the music that's being played here. Now, what I also is a large number of police out here trying to really control the quickly growing number of people that are being coming here right now. Now, everyone seems pretty settled in their spots. A lot of them have their smartphones out, really snapping away the last remaining moments of the year 2013. Now, I've also been able to talk to some of the people who have been braving the cold and the crowd out here. Take a look.
Although the weather is a bit cold, so many people came out here tonight. I'm really excited. And tomorrow I'm turning 20, so I want to start fresh with my New Year's resolutions.
Now, before I let you go, I also want to tell you about the people that will actually be ringing the bell of this year. 5 Seoul City officials, including Seoul City Mayor Park Won-soon, will of course be here. They are the regular members for the bell ringing ceremony. Now, 11 new people have been chosen this year for their acts of courage and hope. Now, they include Korean football star Chaduri, 18-year-old student Nam Eun-tae, who survived blood cancer and came out at the top of the class, and Taru Salminen from Finland, who runs her own traditional Korean makgeolli pub here in Seoul. So an interesting roundup of people here tonight at the bell tolling ceremony, and the mood is getting heated up quickly. I really wish you guys were here with me out here tonight. I'll bring you more updates in just a few minutes as the clock ticks near midnight. Guys?
All right, Leon, thank you for that update. That was our Yudian checking with us from Bosingak.
Participating in Rain's video, Rain, the K-pop star. So I just shot the music video for him, and it's not out yet, but I'm really excited to see it.
소개팅 하고 나서 남산에 가가지고 첫 고백을 노래를 불러주면서 했는데 조리과학 고등학교에 붙은 게 제 기억에 남아요.
좀 후회되는 건 좀 이제 저희 가족들하고 많이 더 못 놀아준 거예요.
저는 믿었던 대학교가 다 떨어진 게 기억에 남아요.
전교생이 한복을 입고 다 같이 전통놀이 투어랑 딱지치기 등 같이 하는 게 제일 기억에 남아요.
올해 고3이다 보니까 수능을 친 일이 가장 기억에 많이 남는 것 같아요.
So I think recently with the passing of Nelson Mandela, such a great soul, so I think that was a great loss, but he left us with so many great memories and great lessons.
Hopefully his legend will be followed by the people of South Africa and also in general in the rest of the world. Peace.
Now shifting gears to top business and economic stories in year 2013. The year in business was one of highs and lows of soaring stock markets and deepening youth unemployment and a moderate revival and skyrocketing household debts.
For more details, we bring in Dr. Yang Chun-suk, professor of economics at the Catholic University of Korea, and our own economics correspondent Hwang Ji-hye in the studio. Welcome, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, Ji-hye, walk us through the big picture of the global economy in 2013.
Well, it appears efforts made to revive the global economy since the global financial crisis in 2008 are beginning to show concrete results, and this is reflected in the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision in December to to scale back its bond-buying stimulus measures, which was put in place to help the economy recover from one of its worst recessions. Although the tapering meant a modest trimming of $10 billion a month from the massive $85 billion per month bond buying, it certainly underlined U.S. policymakers' confidence that the world's largest economy is on course for steady recovery. While it's too early to say that the Eurozone economy is back on its feet, business in the region is picking up, indicating that the worst is over for the currency bloc. So, Professor, what is your perspective on the world economy?
Okay, well, the U.S. is definitely recovering. I think everybody took tapering as good news, especially since tapering took place earlier than they expected. They expected it next year, but they surprised us. And all the unemployment figures, the housing start figures seems to be on the way up. So we're very happy about that. Eurozone, as you stated, they're shaky. Some countries are doing very well. Germany is doing very well, but France is not doing not growing that much. And the problem countries, the PIIG countries, they're still in a slowdown or a recession. So there's some minefield there that we have to look at. China, it's in the 7% growth range this year. Next year, it's probably going to be the same. So we can't look for that much help from there. But what the Chinese have stated is that they're going to double down on market economy and the price mechanism. And they are going to use this opportunity to make major reforms. So if they make that come true, then I think in the long term, the global economy looks bright.
So how would these developments abroad affect the Korean economy?
Right. The improved conditions in overseas and especially in advanced nations is benefiting the domestic economy, with exports hitting a record. But Korea actually posted a current account surplus for the 22nd straight month in November, and the accumulated surplus so far this year stood at $64 billion US dollars, outpacing the central bank's estimate of $63 billion for the whole year. The surplus in the current account, which is the broadest measure of a country's trade with the rest of the world, hit a record high of $9.5 billion in October. The record surplus, however, is due partly to the nation's sluggish domestic demand that has led to a drop in imports, and the large surplus also makes the local currency gain value against major currencies, and this, when paired with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's economic plan, is fueling concerns among Korean exporters, and that's because the so-called Abenomics pours money into the economy and pushes the yen lower, eroding price competitiveness of Korean products like automobiles and electronics goods in the overseas markets.
Right. So, Professor, from your perspective, how has the Korean economy adapted and adjusted to the increasing Korean, the value of the Korean won against the yen?
Okay, well, there has been some anecdotes saying that some Korean goods are having a tough time in international markets, but they haven't really shown up in the numbers yet. So while the exports are only growing at 1.1% or some, people actually expected the exports to fall, but that's not happening. And I think some of the goods that Korea is now exporting, like smartphones, Japan really cannot compete against Samsung. So I think at least for the next year, we're in a nice place. Even with the yen depreciation, we're probably going to keep most of our competitiveness, but there will be some industries like automobiles where we will have to compete a lot more.
So, Chia, some major business groups have been forced to go through some restructuring this year with some tough times.
Right,
for
especially
them.
when Korean economy is not showing its full strength, and there have been a recent spike in corporate failures, and among those under the water are second-tier conglomerates like STX and Dongyang Group. Major affiliates of the conglomerates have failed to handle mounting debt, stoking fears of a fresh wave of corporate bankruptcies. And other groups like Hyundai, Ssangyong, and Dongbu, all among the country's 30 largest family-controlled conglomerates, have also said they will unload some of their assets or major stakes in affiliates to pay back their debts. Hyundai Group, which has been pursuing joint projects with North Korea, as you know, is a separate entity from Hyundai Motor Group. So while some major companies like Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor are increasing sales and enjoying high profits, most other conglomerates are actually reporting falling earnings. And in fact, 46% of the combined operating profit of all listed Korean companies in the first 3 quarters of this year came from Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor Group.
And speaking of the mounting debt problem, it was not only the private sector, but also the public entities that suffered as well this year.
Right. High up on the government's priority list is tackling soaring debt and lax management of those public organizations and also the state-run companies. And the year 2013 was plagued by various corruption scandals involving state-run companies. The government had to order the closure of several nuclear reactors run by Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Corporation that had relied on replacement parts using fake safety certificates. 6 out of 23 nuclear power plants nationwide were suspended, pushing the nation to the brink of blackout during the summer when electricity demand is at its peak. The just ended 22-day rail strike also stems from government moves to improve efficiency of the state-run Korea Railroad Corporation, whose debt more than tripled to more than $16 billion in the past 5 years. The government is now determined to set up a new affiliate offering a new bullet train service in order to improve efficiency of the rail monopoly through competition. In a bid to push for active debt reduction, the Korean government has ordered troubled public organizations to draw up self-rescue plans, warning that the heads of the public organizations would be held responsible for the irregularities and debt problems.
So, Professor, in 2013, we've seen a mixed bag of good and bad indicators. Do you think 2014 will get better?
Well, 2014 will get better, but most people, I don't think, will feel it. The problem is it will get better. The fundamentals will be solid, but, well, a lot of people may not believe this, but Korea hasn't been as hit hard as other countries during the global financial crisis. Now, part of the reason is that the government has been running a very expansionary policy. So it has been doing a lot of government expenditures on infrastructure projects, the Four River Project, and so on, the Sejong City Project. And all of that spending, a lot of it got turned into debt, and that debt went into the public corporations. So those type of public projects account for a lot of the debt problems that we have right now. We also had a lot of expansionary monetary policy. So we've used a lot of these policies to make the economy better than what it could have been during 2008, 2009, 2010. And now we've used up those tools. So even though we would like to continue to use those tools and maybe even have more expansionary policies, we've just about run out of room. So we'll have to scale back on some of those expansionary policies, and luckily the economy, global economy, seem to be recovering. So we won't feel it as we won't feel the reductions in government spending as much, hopefully. But still, that means that we will not feel the recovery as much as we would have under normal circumstances.
So what is your growth forecast for next year for the Korean economy? Okay,
the most global organizations and Korean research institutes estimate somewhere between 3.5 to 3.9%. I'm predicting somewhat on the lower scale of that, partially because there's some good signs of recovery, but there's also a lot of problems, the youth unemployment being probably the biggest one. And also, for the last 5 years, every estimate has been consistently scaled downward.
And we had a really good year for exports in 2013. How is that going to parlay into better growth here at home in 2014?
Okay, hopefully, if the United States recovers, that means Korea will not only be able to export more to the United States directly, but indirectly through China. Now, we have been doing a lot more exports with parts, and a lot of that parts are going to China so that they can use those parts, assemble the goods to send to the United States or Europe. So if the global economy recovers, then we can see more exports of parts to China, more finished goods to the United States. One other thing that I think is notable is that all the small and medium-sized companies, they've been doing very well. And most of the parts exports seems to be coming from those small and medium-sized companies. So that means traditionally part of the Korean problem has been that all the small and medium companies' exports go through large companies. So some small and medium-sized companies have been at a disadvantage, but with the growth in the parts exports, maybe they can export more directly and have more power over their destinies.
All right. Dr. Yang, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and Chi-hye for your insight tonight. Thank you.
And regardless of the global economic stalemate coupled with uncertainties, Korea has certainly fared well on the trade front.
That's right. It has not only maintained its 4-year streak as the world's 7th largest exporter, but last October, for the first time, raked in $50 billion in its outbound shipment in just 1 month.
So here's a look back on how Korean products were received from abroad in 2013.
Back in 1964, Korea's annual exports stood at a mere US $100 million. But since then, its growth has been remarkable. In the past 50 years, the scale of Korea's exports has jumped nearly 5,500 times. Especially this year, it's expected to hit an all-time high at US $560 billion.
Since 2011, Korea has achieved its goal of $1 trillion in trade for the last 3 years, and we're expected to hit record high trade and export surpluses by the end of this year, so it's very likely we'll be able to attain the trade triple crown status.
Currently, out of the many Korean-made goods, a total of 61 categories have made it to the world's #1 in the export market. Of these, which are the best 3 products this year? The first is semiconductor integrated circuits, which reclaimed its #1 spot for the first time in 3 years. As of November, roughly US $52 billion worth of these circuits have been exported. This is a 12.7% hike compared to last year around this time. The second place goes to the already well-established automotive industry. And in third place was ships.
It's safe to say that popular Korean exports such as cars, smartphones, and semiconductors have done extremely well in foreign markets, despite global economic slowdowns, because of their high quality and competitiveness.
This year, Korea's exports from small and medium-sized companies have been on the rise, outperforming the growth rate of large companies. In addition, the categories being exported have become more diversified than ever. Especially noteworthy is the rapid rise in parts and materials. Korea took 6th place in global parts exports.
Up until the latter part of September, parts exports contributed to nearly 50% at some $200 billion of Korea's overall exports. This is a 3.7% increase compared to last year in the same period. That's why you can say recently the parts materials exports have contributed greatly to the trade surplus in Korea.
So then, besides the traditional strong competitors, what other products have seen a new growth in exports? According to a specialized trade newspaper in Korea, this year's popular export items were cosmetics, fashion, and food products, all which are popular with female consumers, showing how they are leading the production and consumption trends of these goods.
As more and more products for women determine the success of a market, related products are becoming popular export items.
In conjunction with global trends, Korean cosmetics have also received much attention in the export market. According to Korea Pharmaceutical Traders Association, Korean cosmetic exports have seen an annual increase of over 30%. Besides these, various mid-sized firms with their IT-based gadgets are emerging on the global stage. In developing countries in Central and South Americas, as well as the Middle East, where public security can sometimes become a problem, Korean-made high-tech cameras, car black boxes, and digital door locks are extremely popular. Also, with many countries entering aging societies, many Korean healthcare products are also becoming popular export items.
It looks like more and more practical and creative products, and those with added services will be the leading goods in the export market.
About 15 minutes remain until the new year, but before we get there, we turn now to the nation's cultural front, where it was an eventful year.
Indeed, and our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won joins us now to give us an overview of some of the year's highlights. Ji-won, hello.
Hi, Jihae and Sean. Well, when I look back year 2013, first thing that strikes me is how quickly it went with so much happening in the arts and culture news scene. But of everything that happened throughout this year, I guess the biggest news must be the Park Geun-hye administration's emphasis on culture. Well, culture enrichment has been one of the administration's one of four key national goals, along with her vision of a creative economy. Since the start of her 5-year term earlier this year, President Park has continued to emphasize the role of culture as a reconciling power in society and as the foundation for a creative economy, which, according to the president, combines creative fields with new technology to produce more jobs. To realize her vision of a country where people's lives are being enriched with cultural activities and cultural values, the Park administration came up with the slogan, Cultural Enrichment, and in July, she launched the Presidential Committee on Cultural Enrichment to bring culture to the people.
That's Ji-won. So what's been done specifically to achieve this goal?
Well, first of all, the administration wants to allocate about 2% of the annual government budget by 2017. Well, that is the average level of most OECD countries, and the increase will be made gradually. In 2013, the government has set aside 1.39% of its annual budget for cultural spending, and next year, the current budget aims to allocate 1.5% of the total budget. Compared to last year, the cultural budget next year will rise nearly 6%, higher than the average of 4.6% increase. And also a basic law on culture, which passed the National Assembly this December, will come into effect from March. Well, this law is just like a constitution in cultural area, as it stipulates that everyone in this country has a basic right to culture, and the country has an obligation to protect people's right to culture. This basic law will be the legal foundation for a further drive in cultural areas, such as a strengthened emphasis on the nation's artist welfare program.
And let's talk about films. 2013 also was when moviegoers went to the movie theaters in droves.
Right, Sean, that was a big news too. So it means that on average, Koreans watched 4 movies at the cinema throughout the year. But we should also note that out of the 10 biggest box office hits this year, 8 of them were Korean movies. Three Korean film directors also made their English language debuts: Park Chan-wook with Stalker, and Kim Ji-hoon's Last Stand, and Bong Joon-ho's Snowpiercer. So it's great to see that Korean film directors are also starting to work outside of Korea.
Right, and speaking of achievements, one of Korea's traditional culture has been enlisted in the UNESCO's heritage list. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. We should really mention this kimjang, or the Korean tradition of making and sharing kimchi. Well, this has made the UNESCO's intangible cultural heritage list earlier this year. And only, only very few food cultures enjoy this designation. So with kimjang, Korea now has 16 designations on the list, along with the traditional Korean song Arirang and traditional dance and martial arts. So to wrap things up, I put together a list of top 7 arts and culture stories of this year. Of course, culture enrichment being set as the key national goal tops the list, followed by kimjang, Korea's kimchi making tradition, making the UNESCO heritage list, and movie ticket sales surpassing the 200 million mark. And next, we have the number of foreign tourists in Korea, reaching a record high of 12 million just last weekend, and Korea's content industry export volume exceeding $5 billion this year, up more than 10% from last year. Also on the list is the restoration of Sungnaemun, Korea's national treasure #1, which was completed in May after an arson attack in 2008. The King Sejong Institutes, the official Korean language institutes recognized by the Korean government, expanded to 117 branches in 51 countries this year, from 90 places from 43 countries last year. So, well, those were some of the highlights of this year, and let's hope 2014 will be bigger and better.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Juwon, for that report. And let's check back and see how Song Ji-sun is doing in the busy streets of Gangnam at this hour. Let's check in with her.
All right, well, Ji-sun, tell us what's going on out there. Looks like things are really heating up right before the countdown.
I know, hope you can really hear this music out here. It's so loud with music filling up the air here at Gangnam Station. Now it's been 2 hours since this show started at 9 p.m. and popular K-pop singers are heating up the air here with the K-pop star at 2 a.m. and Kim Tae-ho now singing along the music until the countdown. And in just 2 minutes, people will see their wish coming into the air as their wish written on the wish balls on the streets of Gangnam will fly 50 meters above the sky. And we'll be seeing that too along with the countdowns in just 2 minutes. And I'll be back after the countdown midnight and hope you guys have a great year. Happy New Year, guys.
Well, we can hardly hear you, but I can surely tell that you're having a great time. Thank you very much, Ji-sun, for that. We appreciate it. We'll keep in touch. ...2013 was certainly a big year for sports and for all the fans throughout the year.
And for the recap of some of the top sports news from 2013, joining us in the studio is SJ. Hello there.
Good to be back, guys.
Right. So what would you say is your top 3 big stories in sports?
Well, you know what? There's a lot of things that happen up and down stories when it comes to sports. We found out about, Lance Armstrong coming out in the Oprah Winfrey Show, admitting that he did use PD, which shocked a lot of us. And of course, the Blade Runner Oscar Pistorius allegedly murdering his girlfriend on Valentine's Day. But I'm not going to be talking about all those down stories. Instead, tonight I will be covering the top 3 domestic sports news of the year, and it was pretty tough picking just 3.
All right, well, let's start with number 3. I'm sure that'll put a smile on many faces.
That's right, and this time I'm going to go on the ice rink, and I'm not going to be talking about Kim Yeon-ah this time, but instead, bam, here we go. Here's the speed queen, Lee Sang-hwa, the South Korean speed skater. Definitely made headlines thanks to her numerous world records in the 500-meter event. And by numerous, I mean 4 times. And you might go 4, well, it's not a big number, but who breaks world records 4 times in a single year, right? And the best of all is that she broke her own record on back-to-back days during the World Cup event in Salt Lake City, Utah. So no surprise that Lee Sang-hwa definitely deserves to be in the top 3 sports news of the year.
And next year, we have Sochi Winter Olympics coming up. How will she do?
Well, you know what? We can only expect a gold medal, right? And it's not a far-fetched idea as well, because she did win the gold medal back in 2010. And that sort of started everything for the South Korean speed skating, considering the country dominated only in short track. So we'll be cheering for her next year in Sochi as well.
All right, well, let's move on to number 2. I understand it involves a very favorite national pastime of our country and, of course, another's.
You know what? Number-wise, I think this athlete was actually mentioned more times on my sports news than any other athlete. And, of course, we are talking about... Yes, Lee Hyun-jin of the LA Dodgers, as he became the first KBO player to sign with a major league team. Now, in November of 2012, the Dodgers won the rights to negotiate with Lee Hyun-jin after posting over $25 million, then signed into a 6-year, $36 million contract. And a lot of the pundits thought it was being overpaid until he dominated his rookie year, posting a 14-8 record with a respective ERA of 3.00. So definitely a great season for Lee Hyun-jin.
It certainly was a successful rookie season. So what can we look forward to in year 2014?
You know what? It was a successful rookie season for Lee Hyun-jin. But if you have a successful rookie season like Lee Hyun-jin did, there's going to be a lot of scouting report on the pitcher like Lee Hyun-jin. So it will be a pretty tough sophomore season for Lee Hyun-jin. But I think, considering the fact that he is a pretty talented pitcher, he might be able to overcome some of his weaknesses and have a successful season his second year as well.
All right, now it's time for the number one sports story.
Oh, this one was tough, and you know what? I had to balance it. I wanted to give it to Lee Hyun-jin for a successful rookie season, but I am going to go with our number one story of the year. It's Park In-bi's amazing 2013 season as the number one sports story of 2013. Of course, she had a great 2012 season as well, but comes back in 2013, wins the Kraft Nabisco Championship, wins the LPGA Championship, and then takes the U.S. Women's Open title as well, winning 3 straight LPGA majors to start off the season. Now, she did miss out on the calendar Grand Slam when she struggled during the Women's British Open, but was still able to win 6 titles this season and finished off the year ranked number 1 in LPGA World Rankings.
What would you say was the highlight of her 2013 season?
You know, of course, everyone's going to talk about her 3 straight LPGA major titles, but I'm going to have to say what she's been able to do for the LPGA. You know, everyone talks about the PGA, everyone talks about Tiger Woods this, everyone talks about Rory McIlroy this, but the reason why I chose Park In-bi's 2013 season as the number one story is because she was able to put the LPGA back in the spotlight once again. Of course, the LPGA rarely gets any spotlight these days, but with Park In-bi going after the calendar Grand Slam this season, a lot of people started talking about the LPGA once again, so it definitely deserves to be the number one story of 2013.
All right, and indeed it was. Thank you so much, SJ, for joining us back in the studio.
My pleasure, guys.
For 2013, the most memorable moment is that I got my second baby. So I have now a baby which is around 8 months old. And this is the most surprising and the best moment in 2013.
김연아 선수 세계 선수권 대회에서 우승했던 거 그때가 제일 기억에 남네요.
I think the most memorable moment was that I visited Korea.
중학생활에서 마지막 시험 끝났을 때요. 저는 중학교 수학여행 갔을 때요.
한국에 너무 재밌게 살았어요. 친구들을 만나고 공부도 잘하고
한 단어로 표현하면 사랑?
여러분
새해 복 많이 받으세요.
Happy New Year!
새해 복 많이 받으세요. 새해 복 많이 받으세요.
Happy New Year!
For the countdown, let's head back to Bosingak Pavilion.
Now, Leanne, less than to be 4 minutes exactly to go. How's the mood there?
Hi guys, the atmosphere here in front of Bosingak has been absolutely electric in the past couple of hours. Now there have been live performances since 11:30 p.m. tonight, and the mood is heating up as people are singing along with the performances here as well. In less than a couple of minutes, about 4 minutes or so, the bell behind me will be rung exactly 33 times to mark the beginning of the year 2014. Now, the party won't be over then. The program here will continue until 12:40 a.m. with more live performances and also special lighting to really brighten up the beautiful traditional bell pavilion standing behind me. Now, afterwards, given that 100,000 people are estimated to be here with me tonight, a massive exodus will ensue. Now, all the roads around Bosingak Pavilion will remain blocked until 1:30 a.m., but you can still take public transportation. The city's buses and subways will be running longer than usual until 2 a.m., but subways will not be stopping at Jonggak Station, the station closest to Bosingak, for safety reasons. Now, you can also get live news feeds on the public transportation and traffic conditions through SNS, your internet, or your smartphone, so please do make use of that as well. Well, that's all from me tonight here at Bosingak. I'll let you guys take over to ring in the new year 2014. Happy New Year, guys.
And a happy new year to you, Leon. Thank you so much for covering the final moments until we usher in 2014. According to the latest clock countdown, we're less than 2 minutes from the new year, and there it is. It's time for another brand new start to life.
That is right. I mean, it's quite surreal. I mean, last year we've done this, and this is not the first time, but this year certainly was filled with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of political upheaval. We've missed a lot of persons. There's a historic passing of Mandela as well, Asian flight crash, bombing in Boston, royal baby birth, and Mandela's passing again. And Seoul's finest are out there giving us a hand. We saw a group of police and security forces out to make sure everything runs smoothly. And it seems like the hosts of the event
are about to start the countdown. We're about 45 seconds away. And of course, this is a tradition that you've seen here in Seoul. The crowds gather. Of course, they gather over in Gangnam, but traditionally they gather next to the Bosingak pavilion where they officially usher in the new year with the bell ringing.
Right, so it's an old Korean tradition, and they called it the Times Square of Seoul until recently. And if you've never been here, then you want to try it someday.
All right, so they started the 20-second countdown. See the big clock out there.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go.
Now it's Happy New Year.
The crowd is going wild.
And they just started the first ringing of the bell.
The bell rings 33 times altogether. Now, the mayor of Seoul, Park Won-soon, will be one of the lucky members who will be tolling the bell.
Right, he's right there in the front in... Is it teal or green or blue? It's a little hard to tell from the
wearing
lighting.
the traditional tariff hanbok.
2014년 우리 모두의 바람처럼 희망과 행복이 가득 차고 국민 모두가 건강한 한 해가
So some people
되길
wonder
소망해
why
봅니다.
this bell is rung and why it's rung 33 times. Well, historically, if you wanted to go into Seoul, you had to go during the times when the gates were open, and there was a night curfew where they shut down the city, where you cannot enter in the four gates. At 4 a.m. every morning, they'll ring the bell 33 times, and then that signals the start of a whole new day and when you can come into Seoul and leave.
All right, I didn't know that. Okay, and the crowd is starting to go out, making plenty noise out there.
가득 채우시기 바랍니다.
네, 오늘 종소리 들으시면서 그동안에 정말 안 좋았던
What a great
마음들,
sight.
기억들은 훌훌
So it's really the time to
날려보내시고
pop that
새로운
champagne,
기운만
wave goodbye to the
가득
old,
차게
and
해주셨으면
hello
좋겠고요.
to the new.
2014년 가보년 새해가 밝았습니다. 서울시와 또 시민 여러분 모두 행복하시길 기원하겠습니다.
And it is
자,
the year of the
연희선
horse,
아나운서,
according to
네,
Chinese
시민 여러분,
zodiac.
또 방송을
It
보고
was the
계신
year of a
분들께
snake back in
새해 인사
2013.
처음으로
Was
한번
it last year?
올려볼까요?
Yeah, and now we will go to the year of the horse, and we'll go into that a little bit in the second half of our show.
Look at the crowd.
네, 이제 2014년 새해를 맞이했습니다. 소중한 분들에게 따스한 인사말 전하시느라 굉장히 분주한 모습인데요. 시민 여러분께서 영상을 통해서 새해 인사를 전한다고 합니다. 시민 여러분의 희망의 새해 인사 지금부터 만나보시죠.
And welcome to the new year. We have officially crossed into 2014 here in Korea.
But the festivities with us aren't over yet. We are here to give you even more live shots of what's happening here in Korea.
And our reporters Jinju and Hwang Ji-ae have decided to stick around to join us to welcome the start of the new year. Hi, guys.
Hello once again.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yay.
Right.
Well, it's certainly a relief that it's not too cold.
Yeah, it was freezing last year, wasn't it?
I know. I was at Bosingak last year, the place where Lian is right now. It was freezing, but I guess it's not that cold this year.
And you froze your hands while you were reporting.
Right, because I had to hold my tablet PC, but I didn't have the smart gloves to cover my hands.
So why don't we head back and see how our Chisun is doing by going over again to Gangnam Street to find out how the crowd is cheering and enjoying year 2014.
Ji-sun, tell us about the vibe near Gangnam Station after the countdown.
Well, hello back again, guys. Like you said, it's not as cold as the previous years. It's slightly above zero, I guess, and it's heating up right here in Gangnam with another singer welcoming the new year. Now it's Lee Seung-hwan following Kim Tae-woo's stage, and tens of thousands of people, especially young generation, are here to welcome the new year and make their wishes come true. Now, of course, after this countdown event, we saw the wish balls on the streets of Gangnam with people's New Year's resolutions and wishes on it flying into the air 50 meters above the ground. And now let's take a listen from the people of their New Year's resolution. Take a look.
I'm gonna meet up with some friends and we're gonna go to COEX to watch the fireworks by the temple.
In the coming year, 2014, I want to be able to enjoy my life by doing what I want.
So yet again, what a great way to welcome the new year here at Gangnam Station, a district now famous in the world after global star Psy made a mega hit with his song Gangnam Style. And of course, a lot of people are here present at the stage, and the station will be anticipating a happy and very successful year for the year post-2014. I wish you a very happy new year, guys. Back to you.
Oh my goodness. It looks like the party will go on well into the night there at Gangnam. Thank you very much, Chisun, for that update.
Yeah, that seems where the party is at if you're in the need for one right now. Well, let's take a step away from Gangnam and see how New Year's is progressing in other parts of the world.
So we have our Kim Hanul joining us live on Skype from Washington, D.C. Hanul, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys. Well, here in Washington, D.C., we're not quite celebrating 2014 just yet. It is still the morning of New Year's Eve in Washington, D.C., but the holiday spirit of ushering the new year can be definitely felt here in the heart of D.C. The crowd that gathered in the heart of Washington, D.C. was actually larger than usual, larger than most weekends, in fact, especially at the National Mall, where there are tons of tourist attractions, such as the Smithsonian Museums and Washington Monument. An ice skating rink, as you just saw now, has been set up in front of the National Archives in D.C. just in time for the holidays. The crowd, both young and old, really got into the holiday spirit with some festive music playing in the background. A New Year concert was held earlier this week at the National Gallery of Art, which has attracted hundreds of visitors and locals. And the gallery has been continuing this tradition that began in 1966 to really wish everyone a heartfelt New Year's wish in music, all free of charge. And there are multiple spots where you can usher in the new year in Washington, D.C. and in Northern Virginia, Maryland areas. You can expect to see fireworks on the Potomac River tonight, and there are various musical events happening around town. What you're seeing now is the National Gallery of Art, where the musical concert was held, and many restaurants and hotels are participating in the New Year's Eve countdown tonight, so you can expect to celebrate the new year with your loved ones, your new family and friends. Well, wishing everyone in Seoul Happy New Year from Washington, D.C. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Hanul. It's so good to see you again. Thank you very much for talking to us. And taking now to China, we connect live to Kevin Tang on the phone from Beijing.
Well, Kevin, Happy New Year from Seoul. Tell us, what's the atmosphere there like, and how are the Chinese ushering in the new year?
Hey, Sean Chi. 新年快乐. This is Kevin from Beijing, and that was Chinese for Happy New Year's. It's actually quite cold here right now, but I'm pretty sure it's colder in Korea. Typically for New Year's, the family will gather all the relatives around and go out to eat a nice dinner. And that meal would consist of eating hot pot. And after dinner, they would typically head home and spend time with the loved ones. The younger ones, like about our age, we would go out to Twin, which is a chick development area where all the bars and the clubs are at. And before we head up to go to the bars, they actually have a fireworks show around there, and it's actually quite a sight to see. So hope you guys can come to Beijing and see it sometime, and back to you guys.
All right, well, thanks, Kevin. Thank you for talking to us. Well, in the coming year, we'll leave the snake behind and enter the year of the horse.
And for those of you who need a primer on what that might mean, our Kim Hyun-bin has a preview of an exhibition designed to help viewers better understand.
What do Samsung Electronics CEO Lee Gun-hee, figure skater Kim Yeon-ah, and Girls' Generation members Yoona and Soo-young have in common? They were all born in the year of the horse, and people born under the sun in the Chinese zodiac are said to be outgoing, energetic, and clever with ingenious communication techniques. But there's more to it than that. And if you want to know more, you can head over to the National Folk Museum of Korea, which is marking the year of the horse with an exhibition to help visitors understand what it's all about.
The new year will be the year of the horse. The horse is a dynamic animal, so with that in mind, we devised this exhibition to help people understand what a big part of our lives and culture horses are.
Visitors will have a chance to see how horses in Korea from the Joseon dynasty to the present day were used and what they look like on different occasions.
Through this exhibition, we had a chance to learn about different types of horses and their characteristics.
There are dozens of artifacts, tools, and other implements on display, with detailed information about each piece and how it was used. The exhibition is scheduled to run through February 17th.
The year of the horse gives us a fresh start, a clean slate to make up for our mistakes and fulfill our goals. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
All right, I guess that sounds like it means that good things are ahead for 2014.
Right, but Jinju, she looks a bit concerned. Why is that?
Well, some of the women might be concerned who are planning to have babies, as 2014 is the year of the blue horse, and there's a superstition that females born on that year are ill-fated. So some people in the past have gone too far as to avoid having babies in that year.
Well, I guess that superstition bolstered the preference for male children, right, in the past in Korea, but I guess it's all meaningless these days.
Well, thank God it's no longer viable these days. But aside from the superstition, there are some real things we can look forward to this year.
Right, so on this first day of a brand new year, let's get a check on what major events are in store for us in 2014 with our Kim Yeon-ji.
On June 4th, 2014, Koreans will elect roughly 3,900 heads of local government and superintendents nationwide. As the first regional election since President Park Geun-hye took office, the June elections will serve as an interim evaluation of the Park administration. The stakes are particularly high for the ruling Saenuri Party, as religious and civic groups have demanded that President Park step down, saying the presidential election of 2012 that brought her into office was a fraud. The spy agency stands accused of trying to influence the outcome of the election by posting messages online. The June elections are also expected to serve as a barometer for the new political party of independent lawmaker An Chol-soo. A survey done in December by Gallup Korea says 32% of respondents said they would support An, a figure close to the popularity of the Saenuri Party, and triple that for the main opposition Democratic Party. Coming up this year in sports, soccer fans around the world are sure to enjoy the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. The matches will be played at 12 stadiums across the country, from the Amazon basin in the north to the River Guaíba in the south. The 32 teams in the World Cup finals will share a total purse of $576 million, with the winners taking home $35 million, up $5 million from 2010. Korea is in Group H with Belgium, Russia, and Algeria. The Korean city of Incheon will host the 17th Asian Games, regarded as the second largest international games next to the Olympics. The event features 28 Olympic sports and 8 non-Olympic events, such as karate and squash, under the slogan, "Diversity shines here." Korea will also host the 19th Plenipotentiary Conference of the UN International Telecommunications Union, the oldest UN agency to date, in the southern port city of Busan in October. The conference is a primary policy-making arm of the ITU, a UN body dedicated to advocating for communication rights. The agenda for the event, known as the Olympics of the ICT industry, features discussions on matters such as radio frequency spectra, satellite orbits, internet governance, and cybersecurity. Korea hopes to use the ITU PP14 as a springboard to become the world's leading ICT powerhouse. 김현지, Arirang News.
Well, as Professor Song said earlier in our broadcast, the political issue is going to be like a big one to cover next year. So I'm very excited to see what developments happen there.
Yes, and this year will be a big year for President Park to get her policies implemented and taking action.
Right, and especially I'm eager to see the effects of the new pension program that will boost the monthly income of many seniors.
Right, so definitely 2014 will be a year of change from a lot of things. Key aspects of everyday life, from addresses to taxes, will undergo adjustments.
Right, Chi Myung-gil takes a look at some of the new government programs related to improving people's lives and revitalizing the economy.
Korea will have a new address system starting January 1st that will hopefully make it easier for people to find their destinations. The new system uses road names and building numbers instead of the lot numbers that have been used for the last century. The lot numbers were assigned according to when the building was built, not where it is located. Under the new system, road names and building numbers will be assigned according to location.
The new address system has odd numbers on the left and even numbers on the right. Building numbers are assigned from west to east and from south to north.
Another change next year has to do with holidays. Starting next year, the number of national holidays and Sundays will come to 67, the most in 12 years. And thanks to a new system for calculating days off, if a national holiday falls on a Saturday or Sunday, people will be able to take the following weekday off.
As a worker, I am very glad that we are able to take a day off on a weekday, if a national holiday coincides with the weekend.
And speaking of holidays, Hangul, or Korean Alphabet Day, which is observed on October 9th, will be considered a national holiday beginning next year. The basic pension program and healthcare will also look a little different next year. Starting in July, senior citizens 65 and older will receive monthly allowances ranging from $95 to $190 depending on their income. Health insurance coverage will be expanded to include 4 major illnesses: cancer, heart disease, cerebrovascular disease, and certain rare and incurable diseases. The sluggish real estate market will get a boost from a cut in the real estate acquisition tax. Under the plan, people buying homes valued at less than $570,000 will pay a 1% acquisition tax, a cut of 1%. The tax will be 2% for houses that cost between $570,000 to $852,000, and 3% for houses worth more than $852,000. 김영길, Arirang News.
Right, so has everyone memorized their new addresses?
Well,
not quite.
I actually did.
Wow.
I did, but I'm kind of worried about the things I order being delivered on time because I buy quite a lot of products online.
Well, Jinju, as the presidential office correspondent this year, were there any favorite memories that you had?
Yeah, she traveled a lot with the president, didn't you?
Well, it was a really good chance for me to see how President Park, as a female leader, used soft diplomacy to her advantage. She even attended hanbok fashion shows during one of her diplomatic missions, and it was really a chance to see how she could approach the people, the local people, in a different way male leaders couldn't have done.
Right, so let's check out what she had to say to the nation. Here is a New Year's message of President Park Geun-hye. Let's take a look.
존경하는 국민 여러분, 2014년 갑오년 희망의 새해가 밝았습니다. 힘차게 달리는 말의 해를 맞이하여 활력이 넘치고 희망이 샘솟는 한 해가 되기를 기원합니다. 지난 한 해는 많은 어려움이 있었지만 국민 여러분께서 신뢰와 믿음을 주셔서 이겨낼 수 있었습니다. 그 신뢰의 바탕 위에서 희망과 변화의 싹을 틔워낼 수 있었습니다. 새해에는 그 변화의 결실을 맺어 국민 한 분 한 분의 생활이 좀 더 풍족해지고 행복한 삶이 되도록 지속적으로 모든 힘을 다하겠습니다. 어렵게 시작한 경기 회복의 불씨를 반드시 살려내서 경제를 활성화하고 민생을 안정시키는 데 국가적 역량을 집중해 나갈 것입니다. 국민 여러분께서도 힘을 모아 경제 도약의 발판을 마련하는 데 함께 해주시기 바랍니다. 국가 경제를 살리는 데 있어 전제 조건이자 가장 중요한 것은 국가의 안보와 국민의 안위를 지키는 것입니다. 북한의 도발 가능성에 대비하여 빈틈없는 안보 태세와 위기관리 체제를 확고히 하고 한반도의 평화를 보다 적극적으로 만들어가면서 평화 통일을 위한 기반을 구축해 나갈 것입니다. 또한 과거 우리 사회 곳곳에 비정상적인 관행을 제자리에 돌려놓는 정상화 개혁도 꾸준히 추진해 갈 것입니다. 국민 여러분께서도 새해 새로운 변화의 미래를 열어가는 길에 함께 해주시기 바랍니다. 새해에는 반드시 국민 여러분들의 삶에 활력과 희망이 넘칠 수 있도록 최선을 다해 나가겠습니다. 지난 한 해 국민 여러분께서 보내주신 성원과 지지에 감사드립니다. 새해 복 많이 받으십시오.
Now, a rather tumultuous year, first year for President Park Geun-hye, but she looks extremely determined to make sure that she runs the country in the right way. Let's talk about some of her accomplishment for this year.
Yeah, despite numerous provocations from Pyongyang, she seemed to have gracefully handled those with her Trust Politique program and philosophy. And that approach had definitely won a lot of accolades from people from all around the world.
Yes, that's right. And her diplomacy with other countries received high marks from the public as well as other experts. And for next year here at home, she has pledged to continue her push to normalize the abnormal, that is, rooting out wrong practices in society.
It's good to see more fairness in the nation, I guess.
Yes, and President Park also promised to make sure that the government will do its best to spread the warmth of economic recovery to the ordinary people and small and medium-sized companies.
Right, but the challenge will be whether the rival political parties will get along.
Right.
Right, but definitely a push to spread some more warmth and to have real people feel some of the economic gains that the country overall has made during this tumultuous period with the global slowdown.
Right. I guess it goes in hands with the pledge of economic democratization and etc. that she made during her presidential election last December.
Coming from an economics correspondent.
Yes.
No, presidential office, economics office. Well, let's turn things over to the entertainment world. We had many stars from the K-pop world gracing our hallways here at Arirang and in the studios this year. So here's a look at some of their New Year's wishes.
And what are you hoping for in 2014? We went to the streets to gather your special wishes.
안녕하세요, 나이미스입니다. 저희 나이미지스 많이 사랑해주세요. 2014년도 예쁘게 준비하시기 바랍니다.
좋은 대박의 기운이 여러분들한테 항상 주변에 있기를 응원하겠습니다.
가족분들과 따뜻한 시간 보내시고요. 또 건강 꼭 챙기시고요.
14년에도 좋은 일만 가득하셨으면 좋겠습니다.
출격! 안녕하세요, 크레오파입니다.
더욱더 힘차고 행복한 일만 가득한 새해 맞이하시길 바랄게요.
여러분도 2014년에 꼭 건강하시고 새해 복 많이 받으시고 모두 하는 일 잘 됐으면 좋겠습니다.
늘 건강하시고 또 새해 복 많이 받으셨으면 좋겠습니다. 그리고 저희 미스에이도 많이 응원해주세요.
2014년 여러분들 하시고자 하시는 일 그리고 꿈 모두 다 이루시길 바라겠습니다. 지금까지 보트게임 빈트였습니다. 우리가 대박나기 대박! 새해 복
많이 받으세요.
그냥 모두가 행복한 거예요. 그리고 여자친구도 그냥 잘 그냥 대학 붙어가지고 남북 통일이 하루빨리 되는 거를 소원하죠. 다이어트요, 다이어트.
살 좀 찌우고 싶습니다.
초등학교에 가는데 멋진 친구들, 예쁜 친구들 만나고 싶어요.
장학금 같은 것도 받고 더 열심히 이제 취업 준비를 하고 싶어요.
글씨도 잘 쓰고 또 그림도 잘 그리고 축구도 잘하고
자신감을 좀 더 많이 키워서
가족들 다 건강하고 공부 열심히 해서 나중에 돈 많이 버는 거.
걱정 없이 안전하게 아이를 맡길 수 있는 거 봐줄 수 있는 사람이 해결된다면
또 개인적으로는 내년에 좀 승진이 있거든요. 그래서 열심히 해서 좀 가족들한테 좋은 선물을.
You know what? I always make New Year's goals and I never follow it. And just spending time with my family, that's the most important thing. And good health.
Well, those wishes certainly run the gamut. I like the practical one. A woman just wants a babysitter, a trustful babysitter.
And diet too.
Yeah, diet was good. Does that include any of your wishes?
Partially, but I want to travel more than at least 3 countries. So that's my New Year's resolution.
Well, reunification did come deep to me. We've been
surely
covering a lot of stories this year.
Right, and that certainly might eventually become a bigger story. I'm just really wishing for a very exciting news cycle next year that is exciting yet not too provocative in terms of our security on the peninsula.
Well, that's very unlikely, but we certainly look forward to that.
What about you, Jinju?
Well, I surely need a healthier lifestyle. So I'm planning to work out more in the new year. Probably Pilates or something like that.
All right. Well, I certainly wish you the best, and thank you so much for joining us and staying with us till the end of our New Year special, ringing in 2014.
I know, it was great to be here with you guys for the New Year's Eve and the actual New Year's
And it was
Day.
really exciting. Greeting New Year here in the studio.
Yeah, a great chance to really look back, say goodbye to the old and say hello to the new. And it's definitely year 2014. That's all the time we have for now. I would like to thank our viewers for joining us this evening. I'm Yuji Hye in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. From all of us here at Arirang TV, we wish you a very merry, happy, prosperous new year. Good night.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So it's all done.
Oh, 우리